I see dead people.
Hot shit.
Here's Johnny.
Stop.
We have such sights to show you.
Bring the motherfucking ruckus. Fuck you too.
I love that you're here, and I love that we're recording at my place and not specifically at your place, because it's just like, for the longest time I had a studio.
Mm-hmm.
And for the longest time I was like, you need to see my fucking studio. And then I had to move out. And then I was like, you can't see my studio.
And I came right behind it.
And then I moved into here in November. So I've literally only been here for like a minute.
Yeah.
And it's nice. I've been able to make it work, and I've had a couple people over to record, so
that's cozy.
It works for what it needs to be, and I'll show you the basement later. I'll show you where my new studio is going to be. It's a room almost identical to the size of this one, so it for all intents and purposes it makes sense. But I'm glad to have you, man.
I'm happy to be here.
And it's been a while since I've seen you.
Yeah.
I know your last episode, I think I said, was like 274 or something, so it hasn't been very long for people who listen. I've been taking my paces with the episodes, and I do bi-weekly now instead of every week because I don't want to kill myself. And there were a couple of things that came to my attention as the year was ending that I was just like, I wonder what he would think about that. I need to record with him again. I need to see what he would think about that. And let me just first close in and introduce the guest that I have here today. Everyone sees the title card. You know what we're doing. You know who it is. You know what shit we're up to. This is Scutch MacGee. He is here. We're here to talk about creepy kids. we're going to talk creepy kids. This is what you come to his episodes for. People like this shit. We're tapping back into it. We haven't done it in like your last two episodes.
We've kind of bounced around.
Your last two episodes, I left you off the hook.
Yeah.
We did Stephen King, then we did Aliens.
Yep.
So now we're back to the creepy kids grind. I remember the last time we recorded a kids episode together, I believe. And I'm not talking fucking Candle Jack or whatever the fuck that story was. There's another episode. I made you I made you read a story about like a parent who forgets their kid in a car and they asphyxiate and die. They came out with a show that's like a main plot point. Do you know that?
I didn't know that.
So M. Night Shyamalan's Servant on Apple.
Okay.
That's like the inciting incident of the show.
Okay.
This mom is married. This mom is married to a chef, and the chef he essentially gets greenlit to star in like Chopped.
Okay.
So he has to leave and fly to California.
Okay.
And he leaves his new wife at home alone with the baby.
Okay.
And she is fucking zonked.
Yeah.
She cannot handle it. And she is on her own. And her brother's a drug addict and he's never around. Played by fucking Ron Weasley. It's great. And she goes out to her car the one day to go get groceries. She puts the kid in the back seat and then brings the groceries inside.
Leaves the kid in the car.
But not the kid.
Yeah.
And the entire show is about how, like, they hire a nanny and they get her, like, one of those, like, real dolls. Mm-hmm. But then the kid starts to, like, become real.
Yeah.
Instead of the doll.
Yeah.
And you're like, is this the mom? Is this the nanny? Is there something supernatural and fucked up going on?
Yeah.
But in case you weren't aware, because I re-listened to that episode recently, and you hated me for making you read that story. Your literal response was, "Why did you make me read that?" Because that's like a gut punch. That's like a real thing.
Yeah, those are real things that happen. Those are, I think, the scariest things that happen are, the things that we actually hear about all the time, such as like. The real terrors. The real terrors. And there's little tiny, like, obviously you want to protect your kids and stuff like that, but there's so many stories I've heard of, parents leaving their kids in cars, parents, like, running over their kids by accident, backing out of their driveways and shit like that.
I never even thought of that.
Stuff like that. Like, you hear all those kind of things and just how that kind of sits with you. being a parent is. I mean, it's a constant idea of protection, but at the same time, you're going like you're making mistakes. Like you have to operate on your own. Like there's no perfection to any of it. So, like you're just trying to limit.
I love that you're putting this in the perspective of me, like going back to being a kid and looking at like how much of a fuck up my parents were, because now I'm realizing that they really were just like winging it.
Everybody is. We all wing it. Like we all wing it. Like there's nothing that prepares you.
We're all
for
winging
it.
it.
Like there's nothing that prepares you for it. So like you kind of figure things out on your own, right? So like the kids are running through the hallway, trips on something, smashes its head into like the corner of a wall. Mm-hmm. And you're like, oh shit, well I gotta put something there now. So, you know what I mean? It's all done like after the fact. You know what I mean? You're like, oh shit, like
you try to get in front of it as much as you can, but ultimately,
honestly,
they will find ways to just fucking ruin everything.
It's just it's tiny shit, and it changes as they grow and stuff like that, right? So you know, like one second you're like the kid's running around, and you're like, oh that's fine, like. Next thing you know, he grows.
You're child-proofing shit.
Yeah,
and
he like literally grows
just rip the child
6 inches, and like next thing you know, he's smashing his head onto a table that he could run underneath. Yeah. So you know what I mean? So you're like, oh shit, now
I gotta fix it. I gotta put the table somewhere else.
Do I make the table higher? Do I make like a higher table? Like, what do you do there? Do I get a lower table now? Like, just crawl over? Like, so it's just this constant thing where you're just.
What is that? Like a little bit of cause and effect, a little bit of rolling the dice. You know, a little bit of gambling, everyday gambling.
Stuff, like sits with like there's so many like weird things that happen. Like there's things that you take for granted that you do in your everyday life. Like medication's a big one. People that leave like I know there's just so many people that are taking like medication and like antidepressants and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. Child safety locks aren't really child safe. Kids will figure out all that kind of stuff.
Kids fuck around with things.
Yeah, but it's just literally just kind of like taking something and like putting something on the counter and not even thinking twice about it. And like that's the stuff that like kills kids. And it's such a casual like thought. You know, it's just something simple like, you know, taking something out of the oven and putting it on the counter and then like, you know, taking 10 steps to the right. Next thing you know, your kid just pulls
a towel down.
300 degrees of molting lava on top of his head and shit like that. Like, those things happen all of the time. And it's like, if you sit there and you just think about it all the time, you're just going to lose your mind. You're just going to lose your mind.
A nervous, anxious
wreck. And their parents are like that. I mean, there's parents that like will just constantly, you know, just eyeball the shit
Well, it's funny because in that show, Servant, that mom just shuts down.
Yeah.
She literally becomes catatonic for like 3 weeks. She does not bounce back until they like hoist a doll in front of her and say, "Look, the baby's fine. Look, it's fine." And she's like, "Oh, is it?" Yeah. It's like, no, she's fucked. Yeah. she's ruined. Yeah. But that show lasted like 3 seasons. It came and went. It has the chick from the first Omen movie that came out last year. She plays the nanny. She's fucking awesome. Yeah. Even the 3 lead actors in that, the dad and the mom and the brother, they're all fucking great. I don't have any of their names offhand, but they're all really fucking awesome. You know, your notes on casual trauma for children brings me to point number 2 that I wanted to ask you about is, have you had a chance to see the new Wolfman movie?
I haven't.
Do you know how it's framed?
No.
Have you seen a single trailer for it or anything?
I have seen the trailers for it. So, I know that the dad is the one that's experiencing everything like that. Yeah. But that's all the trailer really shows. It just kind of shows his like beginning of his transformation.
What they don't show you is that the framing device is quite literally him and his relationship with his daughter. Yeah. And slowly watching that shit just get fucking ruined.
From her point of view, like him watching him just kind of lose his mind and shit like that. That's fantastic. Yeah, that's pretty good.
It's very depressing. Yeah. You know, I was explaining to someone the other day, like, Lee Winnell has been around. He's been doing stuff people don't realize, I think, you know, when they see his name, that, like, this is the dude who wrote Saw. Yeah. He's been around for a while. Like, a lot of people usually chalk up Saw to being, like, James Wan's thing, like, claim to fame. Really, Lee is in it. He plays the photographer. The journalist who's fucking stuck in the tub. Yeah. And he wrote it. Yeah. 15 years fucking pass and he puts out the Invisible Man movie with Elizabeth Moss, which is a fucking banger. Universal says, do you have any interest in doing any other Universal monsters? Because you obviously did, you know, after their whole Dark Universe thing fucking bombed, they let him have rights to Invisible Man. He does what he does. That movie makes a ton of money. Mm-hmm. You know, they ask him if he wants to do another one. He says Wolfman. I like the 2010 one with Benicio del Toro, where they tell the original story just so fucking well.
Yeah.
And then this dude comes along and he's just like, you know what would be real fun is if I just bum you the fuck out for like an hour and 45 minutes. Because it's just this loving relationship. Yeah. This kid like grows up like abused and misunderstood from his dad. He runs away from him and goes to live, you know, in the city. He falls in love with this woman. They have a kid. And then he finds out his dad died. Yeah. And he's like, fuck, I need to go back into my trauma of living alone with my dad in the woods. And he always talked about this monster being out in the woods and it always scared me and shit. So now I need to go back there. And he frames it by saying, hey, lovely daughter that I love, that is so lovely, do you want to come with me to my trauma house in the middle of the woods? Okay. And the wife is just like, no, this doesn't sound like a good time. And the daughter's like, that would be fun, Daddy. Let's do that. And so they go, and everything goes wrong. Yeah. Everything goes wrong. There is an actual monster in the woods. The kid was not just making it up from when he was a kid. He's now a man. He realizes there's an actual fucking monster in the woods. There's a lot of twists and turns. I'm not going to spoil it, but it's a slow devolve into watching someone you love turn into a fucking monster. And, like, it is sad. It is very sad.
What do you think of, you know, the Dark Universe? What do you think of those pictures becoming essentially like small indie flicks like that? Do you think that's the best way to do it?
The Universal Monsters? Yeah. There's two sides to that coin because Eggers is doing his own thing on one side with Nosferatu. Yeah. That was really good. You know, Witch was really good. That was his first movie that gave him the acclaim he needed to go do Lighthouse, which he wanted to do, and then he did Northman for a studio, which I fucking loved. I thought Northman was
such a wild movie. It's just over the top.
Northman is like my fucking movie.
Yeah, it's just over the top, but it's awesome. It's
brutal and delicious and mythological and just awesome. Just awesome.
I mean, they fight on a volcano.
The finale is a fight on a volcano.
You're fighting on a volcano. It's just so over the top.
But he even fights like an ice giant for a mystical sword. Yeah. Like, come on! It's fucking cool.
Yeah, it's cool stuff.
So then he goes and he does Nosferatu, and say what you will, whatever you want about Nosferatu, I've already talked about it, I don't want to get into it too much, but Nosferatu at its core is someone who didn't want to do Dracula, who couldn't do Bram Stoker at the time, who said, fuck it, I'll do it myself. Yeah. And Eggers redoes that with aplomb. It's fine, it was good. And now he wants to do a Wolfman. He wants to do a werewolf movie. That's coming out in like 26. Okay. He's gonna film it this year and it's gonna come out in 26. So we have Eggers doing like the fantastical dark gothic version of Dracula and Wolfman. Yeah. He wants the werewolf movie to take place in like the 13th century. Okay. I don't give a fuck. Yeah. I don't give a fuck. I will watch whatever that man does. Yeah. But then you look at the other side of the coin, on the other side of the industry, and you have someone like Lee Winnell saying, like, no, it's all going to be framed very contemporarily. Okay. I'm going to bring it up to present day. I'm going to put a spin on it. I'm going to say, this could be realistic. Why? This could be realistic. How? Now, do I think he can continue doing that with every single Universal Monster property? No. Yeah. I think there's only a select few. When you look at, like, Guillermo del Toro's, like, Shape of Water, like, that's him doing, like, a romantic version of Creature from the Black Lagoon. Yeah. And, like, we accept that, but, like, plot-wise, that takes place in, like, the early 1900s or something like that. So it's just, like, not necessarily contemporary, but new enough for audiences to be like, this is really good. I think he's also doing Frankenstein now, Guillermo del Toro.
Yeah. He is. He's doing Frankenstein. Yeah. Who is... I'm trying to think of who is the main character for
Oscar Isaac is going to play Frankenstein.
Yeah.
Like the doctor.
Yeah. I'm trying to think of who they actually...
And then
I remember
the dude from Saltburn, he cast as the monster.
I know Chalamet turned it down. He was going to play...
Andrew Garfield also turned it down.
Andrew Garfield turned it down. He said he couldn't get into that deep of the character like that. Yeah. He was afraid of it, essentially. And then Chalamet was another one that was talked about doing it.
I forgot the guy's name from Saltburn, but he's...
I know who you're talking about,
the buff, handsome-looking guy. He's gonna play the monster. But we also, we have a couple different things going on. I think Maggie Gyllenhaal is redoing The Bride.
Yeah, heard that one. Yeah.
To go back to your question, do I think Leigh Whannell has the ability to continue doing this with some of them?
Yeah.
I would love to see a New Age Phantom of the Opera.
Yeah.
I would love to see a New Age Jekyll and Hyde. I think that one's the easiest. Yeah. What is Jekyll and Hyde other than a bipolar's worst nightmare?
Yeah.
What is Jekyll and Hyde other than like a schizophrenic?
Yeah.
Yeah. We could really frame that in a fun and crazy way to make a really interesting movie. But I don't think you could do it with all of them, and I don't want to see them do it to like Dracula. I don't want to see a new Dracula movie. We've had a couple. We've had Nosferatu, Voyage of the Demeter. Like I'm good.
Mm-hmm.
We're getting a new Mummy. I know that too. The guy who did. What did he do? He did something successful recently, and he was like, "I'm working on something new," and Universal gave him the rights to Mummy.
Okay.
So we have that being remade too.
Do you think where they
that's also going to be a period piece?
Do you think that's where they failed? Was that they tried to start off with something that was more contemporary rather than digging back into all these original timepieces?
Well, if you were to fact check it, they tried starting it with Dracula Untold.
Yeah. And
that wasn't contemporary. That was a really bad action set piece.
Yeah.
And when that flopped, they said, let's remake what we know people like. And so they chose Mummy, of all things.
Yeah.
And they put Tom Cruise in it.
And tried to make it into a Mission Impossible movie.
And they tried to make it a Mission Impossible movie.
Mission Impossible Mummy. That's what it was.
And it wasn't good.
No, I think that's kind of like what
blame it on the director more than anything, because it's about how it looked.
Yeah.
It looked Marvel. It looked Mission Impossible. It needed to look more like American Werewolf in London. Like it needed to look more. That's what. It needed to look gritty. It needed to look dark.
Where these
you can't call it Dark Universe and not have it be dark.
You can't just make these characters like all powerful. You lose what makes them romantic.
No, they should be very flawed humans.
Yeah, they're all very intimate. That's what people appreciated about the movies and the, that's Korloff and because they're all very human.
I'm even looking at like Brendan Fraser's Mummy. Like what made that a blockbuster is the fact that they framed a Universal monster in an Indiana Jones adventure flick. Yeah. Like, I'm not even saying that you can't do that. I'm just saying make it work.
Yeah. I
mean, figure it out.
It was well written. It was just for what it was.
That was right place, right time, because we were at the end of we were in the early 2000s, we were at the end of the 90s, we were right at this strikes lightning moment of like, culturally speaking, we hadn't had a Mummy movie in a while.
Yeah.
And at the very same time, the frame of reference was like, well, shit, Indiana Jones isn't cool anymore, so let's do something like it.
I also think, so for, your target audience, I don't think people... The people that they tried to go out, I don't think they relate to Tom Cruise. And I think that'll also hurt them. Like, Tom Cruise is a big name actor.
Yeah, we watch Mission Impossible movies because we can't imagine ourselves doing those things.
Yeah. I don't think the kids, the generation that was coming up, the 20, 25, 30-year-old, they're not looking at Tom Cruise.
No, the last Mission Impossible movie did not do well.
Yeah, because I don't think they just don't know who Tom Cruise really is. He's an aging actor now, and it's kind of sad to think about because we've watched all this stuff growing up, but that's what it is.
Well, he's still a machine. He's still going to continue to do what he does, but you can't force people to be into that.
Yeah.
Which is the side of the coin where I'm like, All right, we have Eggers who's saying, I refuse to budge, even an inch, about my artistic vision. I want it to be period accurate. I want it to be culturally accurate. I want it to be historically accurate.
Yeah.
And then we have the other side of the coin, which is, no, I'm very much going to adapt this however I see fit, and you're going to either like it or not, which is what Leigh Whannell did. Did you see Invisible Man?
I haven't seen that either.
So, Invisible Man is really great because they frame it. Moss hit a stride with, like, Handmaid's Tale.
Yeah, Elizabeth
where
Moss,
she was like the poster girl for, like,
vulnerability.
Yeah,
stuff
for
like
abuse.
Yeah.
You know, like domestic abuse.
Yeah.
And gaslighting. And, like, it's fine. Make it work. You know, Dwayne The Rock Johnson doesn't keep doing movies that he could star in because of him.
Yeah.
It's because the industry keeps saying, do movies like this.
Yeah. There's $40
So
million
it's
to
like,
this movie. Yeah.
You know, that's the reason we get, like, Red One.
Yeah.
You know, it's because they marveled the universe. The industry, I mean. They've marveled the industry. So when we look at something like Invisible Man, that's another one where, like, the iron was hot.
Yeah.
Moss was in charge of what people liked at the time. And it was more of her palette and what she was already good at, which is crying and screaming and running away from things that were scary and masculine. So if people are there for it, then it's just right place, right time.
Yeah.
And then you have it all under the guise of a vague artistic horror movie. And, you know, bing, bang, boom, you got two different audiences that overlap that usually don't, which is woman-led, you know, women interest versus masculine horror interest versus, like, remake of a classic monster. Now, the weird thing about that movie is that they really do domesticate it. They explain it to the T. Whereas I don't think, especially for Invisible Man, we don't need to get into it that much, but, like, it's an interesting twist. There's a twist in there that I won't spoil for you. But it's fun, it's good, it's weird. But I love to sell it to people this way. If you are a domestic abuse victim and you're trying to get away from your shitty ex-husband who used to beat the shit out of you and keep you under lock and key, would your worst nightmare not be him in the room and you just can't see him?
Yeah.
Now, imagine how crazy that sounds when you try telling people that he's in the room with you and you just can't see him.
Yeah.
People then, you know,
Yeah.
It's almost like he's gaslighting you your entire existence.
Yeah.
And then no one around you is going to believe you. Take that sequence and multiply it to the nth degree and you get that movie.
Okay.
It's even as fucked up as, like, he does things to her in the same room with her and he's aware that she knows that he's there and he does it just to fuck with her. And he's like, you know, he will just sit in the chair in the corner of the room and watch her and she will just stare at him because she doesn't see him. Yeah. But she knows he's there.
And that's what I mean though. Like there's intimacy to that.
Yes.
Between characters. Yes. And I feel like
there's a sentimentality.
And I feel like that's what you have to have for these monster movies. Like you have to have some kind of form of that. Yeah,
when you break it all down, you used the word romantic earlier, and I think that's fair. The gothic fantasy aspect of it needs to be. If you ignore that, you don't get the same product anymore, which is why the Dark Universe failed.
Yeah, it was just too.
They turned it into 2000s action, Marvel set piece.
There was no. You didn't love the characters. You didn't really.
No, you didn't care. You didn't care at all.
Yeah, you just didn't care.
It's not realistic. No one gives a shit.
There was like fucking swimming zombies or swimming fucking mummies and shit.
Yeah.
There was just wild stuff.
No, it was not good.
There were like Olympic swimmers and shit.
No, you were literally skeletons.
You were skeletons.
You would be mush in water.
Like, it just doesn't make sense.
Have you ever seen a dead body in water before?
It just doesn't make sense,
And at the very same time, like, we get these sequences in these movies, and I'll give you two parallels. I'll tell you the one, my favorite sequence, and not spoiling it, because you don't know if and when, where it's going to happen, but the sequence that stands out to me in Invisible Man and where it hits its stride is you keep wondering, like, when it's going to hit the fan, when are people going to realize that, like, he's actually there, he's actually in the room, she's not just making this shit up, and the dime doesn't drop until he forces her hand, which is the best part, because she's sitting in a public place confessing to someone about the situation she's in, and she's like trying to tell them, and for the first time the person's looking at her and saying, like, I believe you, I trust you, what can we do, like, what can I do to help you? And what you don't realize is the Invisible Man is standing right there, like, listening to everything they're saying, and he has her pick up a knife in her hand and kill the other person that's sitting across the table. To everyone else in that restaurant, they just saw a woman murder someone. But she's standing there like, what did you make me do? What did you make me... And then naturally she gets fucking arrested. And she at first is like, good, put me behind bars, he'll never get me there. But then he, like, breaks into the police. He breaks into the prison, starts killing all the people around her, and she starts getting framed for each of it.
I gotta see it.
It gets darker and darker and darker.
I definitely gotta
see it. Whereas Wolfman, inciting incident isn't the best part of the movie. The best part of the movie is seeing the things from his perspective. As it's changing. We've never seen that in a movie before. There's really cool sequences where as things are being altered for him, and it's very depressing. It almost reminds me of someone with, like, dementia or, like, Alzheimer's, like how they stop being able to communicate with the people around them. Because it gets from him hearing things weird to him trying to talk to people and his words just don't come out.
Gotcha.
And what he hears is and he's just like, I'm gonna write this down so you understand because I can't fucking hear you. And it's heartbreaking. But it's good. It's a good kind
thing
of
than the
heartbreaking.
my hand is getting hairy and shit like that. Like,
that still happens. That's I didn't love every choice they made with my hands getting hairy and my fingernails are getting pointy, but they do go there for the sake of
he's got to become a monster.
He's got to become a monster at some point, but they frame it in the realest way they can, which is kind of just like he gets super rabies.
That's never really happened before. Like, it's
a dude
like you're
just
talking
gets
about,
super
like,
rabies.
Where that's the end game rather than that's something that's almost like instantaneous. Like, usually they get to I'm a werewolf pretty fast.
Yeah, the moon comes out, woo!
And then it's alright, after now. The rest of the movie is now
alright. The entire movie
is just to build up to him becoming
the
monster.
It's the night of him being cut and the infection taking hold, and you're slowly watching it happen.
I like that.
They frame it as a what's the genre of horror? House invader.
Okay.
House invasion. You got your next strangers types movies where people are stuck in a house and they have to find their way out of the bottleneck of the situation. They frame it that way because the monster is very much outside. But then they start to realize the monster's also inside, and it's my dad.
Okay.
Yeah.
Check it out.
So, just a quick shout out to Lee Winnell.
That's fun.
He did a fun thing. I think Invisible Man is a stronger movie because it has more. It just has better lines. To get crossed. No one expects Invisible Man to go that hard, whereas you kind of imagine what Wolfman is going to be, and it does exactly what you imagine it. But that doesn't mean it's bad. Just because it does what you expect, it doesn't mean it's bad.
It has to get to
You
can't call it Wolfman.
You can't call it Wolfman and not do that. Now, I will say it's the difference. It is there's a reason they call it Wolfman and not werewolf. It is not it is not the moon comes out, I'm gonna howl and run off into the woods. It's no, like, I'm literally, like, half wolf, half man, and I hate this shit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
That's fun. I did want to talk to you about that, so that's cool. Another quick revelation.
Mm-hmm.
I've had to skip out on this for the last 2 episodes because it wasn't relevant. Because last episode, again, we read Aliens, and the episode before that, we read Stephen King.
Yeah.
So it wasn't relevant until now. But I wrote you a short song. I love that this is coming up at the half-hour mark of an episode I promised we wouldn't get away from ourselves on. I wrote you a short song. Do you know the tune of Davy Crockett?
Yeah. Are you going to sing this?
Shh.
Oh my gosh.
Born in a cave out in Tennessee, scaredest dad in the land of the free, doesn't think he'll live much past 50, thinks his kids will murder him in his sleep. Scutch MacGee, dad of the creepy frontier. Scutch MacGee, will his kids kill him? Not quite clear.
What made you even think of that?
I don't know, man.
No? Yeah?
I don't know. Davy Crockett got stuck in my head one day, and I realized that Scutch MacGee moves to the same tune as
Davy Crockett.
Davy Crockett.
So unbelievable, bud. I don't know how to respond to that. I couldn't even... There's no time in my mind I would ever even know.
Dude, I must have been high one day. I swear I wrote that like 3 years ago.
When's the last time you saw Davy Crockett?
It's not about seeing. It's about the fact that I go to Disney all the time, and when you walk through Frontierland, they play like
that song.
That's like a Disney song that they originated. So like you just hear it sometimes, and it just gets stuck in your head. Like it's just one of those songs I remember from when I was a kid. And what's funnier than like writing a stupid song?
So crazy.
So just to reiterate. Okay. Born in a cave out in Tennessee, which I don't believe that's where you were born.
No, absolutely
but
not. That's fun. Yeah.
Scaredest dad in the land of the free.
That's fair.
Doesn't think he'll live much past 50.
Very fair.
Thinks his kids will murder him in his sleep.
It's getting much more of a possibility.
Scutch MacGee, dad of the creepy frontier. Will his kids kill him? Not quite clear.
Like if I'm a dad, like during like Oregon Trail times, both of my kids are catching cholera, and I'm just throwing them right in the bushes.
It's funny you're saying that because Alley Cat's been playing the shit out of that. I got her the new Oregon Trail for the Switch. She loves it. Yeah. I keep asking her if she's gotten dysentery yet, and she says no.
Yeah,
but I think she's fucking lying.
I'm not saving them.
I'm not saving them. I also want everyone to know that the minute we like sat down, he immediately started saying like, "Oh yeah, my kid's like he's what, like 13, 14 now."
He's 14 now.
He's 14. He's 6 foot brick shit house, 180.
Yeah.
Could put me in the ground in an instant. He compared it to was it Lenny from of Mice and Men?
Yeah.
He expressed genuine concern, and you know what I did? I laughed. I laughed at it. Now, one of the things that did come up in one of the earlier episodes that I thought was funny that we haven't talked about in a while because it's in tune with what we're gonna read on the episode. Does your daughter scare you anymore?
So my daughter, amazing.
Because as a kid, you were like, she's doing weird shit.
She's doing weird. She did like we talked a little bit like she was writing in her blood on the walls and shit like that. We started talking about all that stuff.
You told that story on it happened, and you were like, I have to tell you this.
I have to tell you this story. Yeah. So there was the story of her drawing blood on the wall. How she used to just like pop up in my room at night, and she was tiny, so like. I know, like, you always see those things where, like, you see this thing where someone's sleeping in bed and they kind of look over and there's like a whole silhouette of somebody kind of like standing next to their bed.
The shadow.
But she was so tiny that it was just the
like
fucking.
A head.
It was a head.
Yeah.
So you would pop your head up if you slept on the edge of the bed. You'd pop your head open and there would be a fucking
face there.
Head, like a face in front of you. That's different, right? It's
that
not
is
like
different.
It's like, oh, there's somebody in the corner, right? It's still creepy as shit, but like.
Or in the doorway.
Yeah, when it's like
looming figure
when
in
it's
the doorway.
Like bang, and you're like you go from being like sleep hardcore like REM sleep
to I am very much
awake, and there's literally a face within 6 inches of your fucking dick.
Enough to kiss you.
Yeah, it's enough to fucking punch that in the face is what it is.
you've mentioned.
It's enough to rock that.
You've pulled a number of punches in your time.
Yeah.
To reiterate the question, has she gone on to be a creepy little freak?
No, she's actually like mellowed out, but she's actually become like a monster horror fan in her own.
Yeah.
Like she.
You told me the last time I came over that you were dipping her toe into stuff.
But she was getting like. We had started off. Did I tell you the story about how the first one I really like had her watch? We watched Cooties.
Yeah.
Did I tell you that story?
You did.
Yeah, and how like she kind of lost her mind. Like I just heard this noise next to me,
yeah.
And she had never really watched anything. Pretty much like a horror movie. That's not really. That's more like a horror comedy and stuff.
It's a horror comedy, but there's still stuff in there.
So the first thing that she sees within 10 minutes of that movie, if you remember, is literally the kids are just eating all the adults and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So I'm cracking up watching it, and then I just hear this noise next to me, and it's this like super high pitch like squeak, and I just look over. And she is so traumatized that she can't physically say anything.
How old was she?
Oh, she's probably, at that point, she's probably 8, I want to say.
Yeah.
That, like, I don't know, it's a wild movie, but like, she's so traumatized by it that, like, literally...
It's visceral.
That's the only noise that she can physically make, is that,
squeaks.
Like, squeaking noise. And
that kind of, like...
Yeah, and that's what it sounded like. And, but it was, like, a constant.
just like, at a loss, just...
Yeah, so it was just like
just a
constant,
scream
like,
caught in the back of her throat.
Exactly right. Yeah. And I was like, so I looked at it, I was like, oh, you don't have to watch this, and I immediately like just ran upstairs, get out of here. So like.
But then you said, you said it about your son. You said you showed the last time I was over. You said that you were showing your son like the Hellraiser movies.
I was. So like we started off with like, what we started off with The Thing, which is
Dude, you started off with The Thing.
Yeah, so that was like one of the ones like we like. Really
I don't know if you could start off with The Thing. I watched that when I was 10, and look at me now.
Yeah. So he was. Yeah, but he likes the older, like retro style movies and stuff like that. So he likes practical effects.
Mm-hmm.
He's dug into all that stuff. So that was his more of the thing. He doesn't really like all the contemporary stuff. But my daughter, on the other hand, is digging hard into all the contemporary stuff that she likes. She likes the jump scares and stuff like that, so she's kind of digging in all this stuff.
Name something. What's like the last thing you watched together?
She got big into like the Scream series.
Okay.
Yeah,
slashers.
She's gone to slashers. She went through all those. We've gone through all
those
the Scream
are fine.
stuff. Yeah, those are fine.
Those are interpersonal. Those are dramatic.
Yeah.
It's like soap operas with knives.
And it's
There's nothing wrong there.
So we went through the Scream series.
As long as she's not doing it to you.
No, and she wanted to get, like, there's still stuff I don't let her watch. Like, I'm not going to let her get into, like, Terrifier and stuff like that. And obviously I'm not going to dig into those things.
I was going to ask. I recently did our movie review of 2024 with a buddy of mine, Mark, the quiet guy. He doesn't like the Terrifier movies. We had to like almost draw a line in what we were talking about. I was like, I saw it in theaters. I thought it was the best of the 3 so far because it actually had a plot.
Yeah.
It was brutal. It still does brutal stuff. But I wouldn't sit my 10-year-old down and show them the first one.
Exactly.
I really wouldn't.
Yeah.
I don't think I was ready to see the first one until I was over 20 years old. Like it came out when I was like 27. That's not the point. I'm saying you should be of like drinking age to be able to handle that first one.
There's a lot to that movie.
There's a gruesome... Yeah. There's an actual gruesome turn to what those movies are capable of, and I acknowledge that, but I'm also not shitting on it.
See, so like, for me, I liked Art the Clown when they kept him as very like simple, sadistic.
All Hallows Eve.
Yeah, like alright, like before now they're almost into this point where he's almost like he's like a sentient being almost now. Like you hear like there's a lot of uh how people talk about it, how like Art the Clown versus like Jason Voorhees and stuff like that. Like who would win those fights? Like that's the era like he's getting into now. Like he's getting
have
into
you
that.
seen all of the movies?
I have seen
Terrifier?
I've seen the first two. I haven't seen the last one.
So
And I've seen all of those.
I was gonna say in the second one they do imply that he's almost like a new age Cambion demon.
Yeah.
Like he could come back from the dead.
Yeah.
You know, he could put his head back on.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
Now just outright claiming that he could go toe to toe with some of the heavy hitters, I don't know. I think he needs more street cred before I'd claim something like that. But
I forgot that they did that in the second.
But there's something.
Yeah.
The third one goes hard.
Yeah.
In supernatural territory that it actually makes where they're going with the fourth one more interesting, and that's without spoiling anything. Yeah. So, take that however you will, but I do think that there's.
So you like that turn more than how it originally started was just the more. This is just some sadistic dude that's just. I
think no, I hated the first movie. Yeah. Frankly, I hated the first movie. I thought it was.
Over the top to be over the top.
Yeah, it was gore to be gore. It was shock to be shock.
Yeah.
And I think more than anything, it was a dude's special effects love letter.
Okay.
And I think it was him just trying to say, hey, listen, if you give me money, I could do this with plot.
Yeah. That makes sense.
Because it's not. Yeah. That movie does. That first one doesn't have a plot.
No.
It's just happenstance. Yeah. You can't claim that that's plot.
Yeah.
It's two chicks in a warehouse for an hour and 10 minutes. It's not.
Much. Yeah.
It's not good.
Yeah.
And that's where you get the second one, and it has a budget, and it has plot, and it has a final girl, and it has stuff going on. I think the second one is good. It's nice.
Yeah.
There are moments in the second one that I'm like, eh. But really, truthfully, I think the third one hits stride. Okay. I think the third one is what I would like to see them continue doing, because there is a tongue-in-cheek quality that's growing with it, and at the very same time, it's gruesome, but it's not just for the sake of being gruesome anymore. Like, now it's a means to an end. He's trying to do something, and you're picking up on it.
Yeah.
In the first one, he's just being a dick.
Yeah.
He's just being an asshole, and there's something scary about that. I get that. Like the stranger's argument, because you were here.
Yeah.
Like, I get that. I think a lot of people find that scary. I don't.
Yeah.
The because you were here doesn't scare me. I like it
because you were home.
Yeah, because you were home. That's the line. I fucked it up.
There.
Yeah, I think a lot of people find that scary.
Yeah.
The happenstance side of it. I really don't.
Yeah.
Not in a movie like that. Not in a movie like Terrifier. That's not gonna work.
I think people have a visceral reaction to the idea that they can just run into somebody at any time throughout their lives that can basically just take yours.
Yeah.
Without meaning. And I think that's kind of a piece of that.
I
think the Terrifier movie took that to just a complete monstrous level.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I can get the kind of point of that, and then where it goes from there. So there is a reaction to that, especially in the home.
But now there's a mythology to it, and
now you're getting into something completely different into it.
There's a demon side to it. He has a mission. He has a plan type of side to it. Like, I'm not picking up everything.
Yeah.
Leon's putting down, but I'm saying it's a hell of a lot better than what it was. I don't, because then when we break it down, like, you are essentially asking me, who do I find scarier, Jason or like Leatherface?
Yeah.
And like 10 out of 10, Jason.
Yeah.
I will never look at inbred idiot with gruesome weapon as like the thing I'm most afraid of. the thing I don't understand, the thing that keeps following me, the thing that keeps coming back no matter how much I put it in the ground.
Yeah.
The thing that I can't wrap my head around.
Yeah.
The thing that keeps catching up to me no matter how much I run.
Yeah.
The thing that I just can't escape.
Yeah.
You know, that will always.
And I think that's always.
scary,
I mean, that's such a formula for like Smile. Like that's literally such a formula for movies. That it's just something that you cannot escape. You know, there's just different versions of that over and over and over again.
Correct.
You can have the STD and It Follows.
It Follows. Yeah.
I mean, but that's still, it's just that overwhelming sense that there's nothing you can do, and they've done that in different like
slow building dread.
Yeah.
The eventual doom and gloom. I live for that.
Yeah.
I think that strikes fear in where I live.
Yeah.
That's what I like. You know, when someone says, you know, The Strangers is the scariest movie I've ever seen, I look at you and I say, okay, you have a very realistic frame of reference for how you live your life. Sure. And things you value.
Yeah.
And what
you value
your fears,
safety and comfort.
Your fears are very
home.
Palpable in how you live your life.
Yeah.
My fears exists on the brim of my imagination.
Yeah.
My fear exists on what I can create that I don't quite get, that I don't quite understand. I'm not worried about my neighbor.
Yeah.
I'm not worried about, you know.
Yeah.
I'm not worried about the creepy weapon or the dude across the street. I'm worried about what's lingering in the darkness that you can't see.
Yeah. And there's just very different ways that people look at what they're afraid of. And people that put stuff into their own real life, and there's people that, you know, go beyond.
Yeah, I mean, we could literally talk about it till the cows come home when it comes to, like, what scares you the most.
Creepy kids.
I think, creepy kids. If we're bringing it back to creepy kids, I think something that we always talk about when we get into the topic of creepy kids is that, as we've said so many times, there's two sides to this. Mm-hmm. It's a bilateral fear. There is the fear for the kid, and then there's the fear of the kid.
Yeah.
The fear for the kid is that they're too young to understand the pain, the torture, the fear, the things that are going on around them, the situation that they're in. Mm-hmm. The monster that will rip them apart is sometimes a very literal thing, and it's also a very metaphorical thing. You know, versus the fear of the kid, which is really, truthfully, what are they capable of? They do not have a sense of right or wrong yet. They're still just kind of learning how the world is. It's very Children of the Corn. It's very, like, what can they get away with? You know, their imagination works on a completely different spectrum than ours do.
Yeah.
They don't know. I love that, like, that fucking, like, TikTok of, like, the guy standing there with, like, the fake hand, and he gives his kid a knife, and then the kid, like, slaps his hand with it, and drops his fake hand.
Loses its mind.
And the kid is just, like, just, like, staring at the hand. And it's just like, well, how do kids learn that?
Yeah.
How do kids learn that, like, when I stab you, it's going to hurt you and you might die? Yeah. They might not ever learn that.
They might.
And they might really, just stab you and you might die.
It is so much different now than... it's such a big cultural difference now as we've gotten older. Like, so for now, like, kids can see all that. They'll see that stuff within online or within video, like, super early. They'll just see stuff like that.
Media now has kind of
beaten
the dog a couple times.
Ruin that, but, like, for me, like, when I was a kid, the way you learned, like, a knife hurt was by
cutting yourself.
You're like, oh shit, like, right? Like, I still have scars on my fingers from that. Look how cool this is, and just, like, almost cutting off almost my fingers.
Yeah, like cutting one of your fingers off.
You know? It's the same thing where, like, you're afraid of heights because you climb up a big ass tree and you fall out.
And you break your arm.
Yeah. You know, it's the same kind of concept for all that stuff. So, in its own way, it is terrifying being a kid and, like, kind of learning all that stuff. And those are the basis of our fears. Like, that's what eventually, it's not movies and stuff like that, but those are the basically the
No.
birthplaces of our fears and things like that.
No, because and I'm saying yes, but I'm also saying it's not those places because I didn't watch The Thing when I was 10 and start giving my dog the side eye.
Yeah.
Like that's not that's not what made that terrifying. That's not what made that different. What was terrifying was seeing something I couldn't understand happen in front of me. I didn't then think that that was going to happen in real life. Yeah. The idea is that I'm being, like you showing your daughter cooties, like me sitting there trying to wrap my head around something that cannot possibly exist in real life, but I'm seeing it in real life. Yeah. And that's the difference between, like, I think growing up, you're looking at CGI and you're saying, that's CGI. I think there was something, like, palpable about practical effects throughout the, like, 80s and 90s that really cemented itself in time, and I really fucking miss it. There are times where I'm just like, can we not? Can we please? And, like, I don't know if you know this, I don't know if we've ever talked about it, but do you know that for the 2011 Thing prequel, they filmed the entire movie with practical effects?
And then they went to CGI with it.
The studio said this doesn't look good.
We don't do this anymore,
Put a shine on it. What the fuck?
Yeah, that's crazy.
Release the practical effect cut. I mean, you can't, but, like, you should. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? Like, we've forgotten the face of our fathers.
I think so. I think, like small things, like what made Jaws so good was that there was a real fear to that. Like, it's such a normal thing.
I love that you bring it back to Jaws. You were afraid to take a shower.
Yeah, everybody goes to the beach. You know, it's just one of those things where, like, we go swimming all the time. Everyone goes to the beach.
The ocean covers 75% of the planet.
Exactly, and we never think more than 50 feet out into the water of what's beyond there. That we can see, and then you take that and you just take a giant monster and you literally put it right into the middle of all a real monster, and you put it right into the middle of that.
You put a grizzly bear in the ocean.
Yeah, and you put it right in front. So I mean that's what made that movie work so well, because it's not just doing something that no one's ever done before. I mean, there's obviously been, like, sea monster movies and things like that, but you've never done something that was
hit you where you lived.
Exactly. It's something that you've done yourself. Like, you can't relate to certain things, right? I can't relate to fighting a giant octopus as a harpooner on a fucking I can't relate to that, right? No. But, like, I can relate to swimming out in the ocean, 30 feet out in the ocean.
I do that every summer with my family.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, and I think there's scary stuff to that. So.
Yeah, that's fun.
That's fun.
I think for where we're getting to now, I think we need to read something. I don't think we have to read everything that's on this list, but we could certainly read some of the stuff that's on this list. Okay. I'm gonna read a couple titles to you. You tell me what stands out to you the most.
Okay.
Goddamn. The first three titles are just so fucking stupid. I hate when No Sleep is like, I'm gonna write an entire sentence for a title, because they just want you to click to read the rest.
Yeah.
Story number 1. I had a disturbing conversation with my 7-year-old. Story number 2. I had a disturbing conversation with my neighbor's 10-year-old. Story number 3. My son's camera monitor alerted me in the middle of the night.
We're going to do number 1.
We're just going to go right from the top.
Yeah, bring it right
from
the top.
Alright, if we're going right from the top, I might as well just erase that read-through and we'll just go right from the top.
We're just going to go right to number 1.
That's fine. I do think this is from No Sleep, but I'll double check my sources when we upload it, and I'll erase my saying that if I got it wrong. But I had a disturbing conversation with my 7-year-old daughter.
Dad, I saw a zombie. I was in the kitchen making tea when my little girl came rushing in. She ran through the back door so fast she almost tripped up the step. I poured boiling water from the kettle into a mug, hardly looking up. Oh, yeah? Yeah, I did. His face was all pale and messed up. It was gross, Dad. I put the kettle back and picked up the milk. I really had to be more careful about what I watched on TV in the evening. Rosie has a habit of sneaking downstairs at night, and the last week she caught me watching The Walking Dead of all things.
Yeah.
She's had zombies on the brain ever since. I keep telling her that they're not real, but it doesn't seem to make a difference. Sweetheart, what did we say about zombies? I scooped the tea bag out of my mug and dumped it in the bin. You know if you keep talking about them, Daddy's going to get in trouble with Mummy again. Yeah, but I saw one. I know, darling. We already checked the back garden twice yesterday, and I can promise you it's a zombie-free zone. No, not in the back garden. I didn't see it in the back garden. I had the mug half raised to my lips, but now I put it down again. I turned to look at Rosie. Her hair was windswept and her little cheeks were red, as if she'd been running. Sweetheart, I put on my best stern, Dad's not happy voice. I'm going to ask you a question. I want you to be honest with me. Have you been playing along the path out back again? I didn't really need to ask the question because I already knew the answer. Rosie is allowed to play in the garden and on her own, and sometimes if she asks permission first, we let her ride her bike along the path at the back of our house, the one that runs past all the neighbors' back gardens. That's all we ever allow her to do. The area is pretty safe, but these days you can never be too careful. There was a burglary a couple roads over a few months back, and last year someone was mugged on the high street. Several years ago, a few towns over, a little boy even went missing. That was quite a long way from here, but it made national news for a few days until the search fizzled out, and it made a lot of parents more cautious. Rosie's getting older now, and she's an adventurous little girl, but still, you have to have boundaries. On a few occasions lately, Rosie's been crossing those boundaries, riding her bike further than she should, not coming in straight away when we call her, sneaking out the back gate when she's only meant to be playing in the garden again. As I watch Rosie now, I noticed her face growing redder. She looked away from me, down at the kitchen floor, and scuffed her feet. Dad, I only went a little way down, she said. I promise. I was chatting to Mr. Henderson, because I saw him in his back garden. I said hello and made him jump. I sighed. So there it was. Mr. Henderson was Rosie's zombie. Yesterday it was the postman, and the day before was a different neighbor. I took a sip of tea and shook my head. Mr. Henderson was, in fairness, a better candidate than the others. The guy lives on his own and looks about 100 years old. Moles all over his face, skin like a deflated balloon. And whenever we chatted over the fence before, though he'd always seemed nice enough, just a little bit lonely, I couldn't have Rosie around going around calling him a zombie. Listen to me, sweetheart. I know you didn't go far or anything, but I don't want you... I came right back after too, Dad, Rosie interrupted. She was staring up at me now, blue eyes large and pleading. I promise. And even when I said no, Mr. Henderson offered me an ice cream because I know you don't like me taking stuff from strangers. I opened my mouth to respond and then paused. He offered you ice cream? Yeah, but I said no. Mr. Henderson really wanted me to come in and have one.
Oh, shit.
But I told him I had to get home. And then I came straight back here to tell you I'd seen a zombie. And Rosie was babbling now, her voice whirring like a motor, but I stopped listening. My mind was still stuck on something she had said a moment before. Mr. Henderson really wanted me to come in and have one. I took another sip of tea and frowned. That wasn't good.
Oh, no.
I didn't mind the neighbors chatting to my little girl, but I didn't like the thought of them inviting her in. Not without us there.
Yeah.
Not even if they're just kind, lonely old men.
Ugh, that's actually worse.
Got some ice cream. I made up my mind to go around and visit Mr. Henderson later. Tell him that, myself, kindly of course, but firmly. In the end, though, I didn't get a chance, because a few minutes after I had the thought, Rosie said something else. Something that pushed everything else from my mind, and ended any idea I might have about going over to Mr. Henderson's house. She said something that made me feel cold. Daddy, please don't stop me playing in the garden. I promise I won't sneak out again. I don't want the zombie to get me. Rosie, I'm not going to stop you from playing in the garden, but you have to make me a couple promises. First, promise me you'll stop going around calling living people zombies. Mr. Henderson might be old, but he's not one of the living dead. Rosie frowned. I didn't. What do you mean you didn't? You just ran in here a moment calling him one. No, I didn't. Mr. Henderson's not a zombie. I saw the zombie in his house, but it wasn't him. I frowned. I had the mug raised to my lips to take another sip of tea, but now I put it down again. What do you mean, sweetheart? You saw someone else in this house? Yeah, the zombie, Dad. I could see it pressed against his little basement window when I was talking to him. Cold fingers ran up my spine. What? Yeah, it was really scary. Its face was all bashed up and bloody, and its mouth was open, like it was screaming at me. But do you know what confused me most, Dad? I tried to keep my voice steady. What? Well, I didn't realize kids could be zombies too. I thought it was only grown-ups. But I guess I might have just been wrong, because the one in Mr. Henderson's basement looked just like a little boy. That's good. That's good. I like it. It's good.
Yeah, it doesn't go where you think it's gonna.
It doesn't.
So that's it's a fun way of them.
I kept waiting for an actual zombie.
A little bit, yeah.
I was like,
a little bit.
There's gonna be something.
But I'm glad it went the Jaws route of being like, no, you know what's actually scary? Your fucking creepy ass neighbor.
Creepy ass old Mr. Henderson.
Yeah, fuck Mr. Henderson.
Yeah.
All right, well, this one, I think the same author obviously wrote a follow-up, but maybe not the same guy, just same idea. Mm-hmm. This one is called I Had a Disturbing Conversation with My Neighbor's 10-year-old Son. So this guy needs to stop having conversations. Yeah. Is what I think. This guy
He's having a rough time right now.
This guy should just stop talking.
Yeah. Just go in the room.
Which is fine. I should take that note sometimes. I didn't hear Michael at first. The noise of the mower filled my head like a swarm of angry wasps drowning everything else out. I was finishing off the last strip of grass closest to my neighbor's wall, being as quick as I could. The last hint of light was bleeding out of the sky, and I wanted to get back inside as soon as I could. A beer in front of the TV was calling. But when I reached the far end of the garden and cut the power, I heard a voice behind me. Paul? I jumped slightly. You know when you're so caught up in your own head you forget your surroundings? Well, my wife is back from holiday tomorrow, and she's been off in Spain with a couple of her friends for the past week, and I'd been thinking about my plan to meet her at the airport. Timings, when I need to leave, all that. I was in my own little bubble, and the voice floating over from my neighbor's garden punctured through it. I turned the mower and stared over to the low wall into the garden next to mine, and I couldn't see anything at first, as the sky was mostly dark overhead, and the only light spilling into the gardens came from a single street lamp on the road behind my house. It did little to shift the shadows. Over here. I shifted my gaze and finally saw him, Michael, my new next-door neighbor. I'm pretty bad at guessing kids' ages, so am I. But I reckon he has to be around 10. He's got a shock of messy black hair, big brown eyes. The kid's a starer, too. I've only seen him a couple of times since him and his mom moved in last week, but every time I do, he gazes at me like he's looking at an animal in a zoo. It's a little annoying.
Just has shit all over his face.
Yeah, just probably an ugly dude, frankly. If kids are staring at you, you're probably freaky looking. This is the first time he's actually spoken to me, though. Oh, hey, Michael, is it? I actually knew his name perfectly well. I'd bumped into the estate agent selling the house next door, and he'd told me, but I didn't want to appear over-familiar. Yeah, I'm Michael, and you're Paul, my mom said. That's me. How you guys settling in? Okay, I guess. Michael stared up at me with those large brown eyes of his, and I didn't have much cause to talk to kids, so I may have been completely wrong about this, but I had a feeling that Michael was making a lot more eye contact than someone his age normally would. He hardly even blinked. Young kids, at least in my limited experience, tend to be all over the place, little bags of energy, but Michael was the exact opposite. It's probably close to his bedtime, I found myself thinking, and then, off the back of that, you want to be glad he's not bouncing off the walls. If he was one of those kids, he'd never get any peace. Amazingly, considering they were still in the early moving stage, I'd barely heard a peep out of Michael and his mother. I'd been expecting to hear the sound of furniture shifting and boxes being lugged around all week, but I hadn't. They'd hardly made any noise at all. I'd hardly seen them at all, for that matter. They'd arrived late one evening the previous week, and I caught a glimpse of them from my window of my study, but that was pretty much it. I remember Michael's mom as tall, attractive woman who looked a little older than me, but I hardly even got a proper look at her face. And this conversation with Michael was the first interaction I'd even had with either of them. I'll go round at some point when Beth is back home, I thought now, folding down the mower's handle. Then we can introduce ourselves properly. So, Michael, picking up the mower and carrying it back along the garden, what are you and your mom up to this evening? I'm guessing it must be close to your bedtime soon? Nah, nowhere near, he said. I chuckled. Okay, well, my bedtime's pretty early, so I'm gonna head in and catch a bit of TV, I reckon. I'll see you around, yeah? I reached the little wooden storage area at the end of the garden and slotted the mower underneath. I was on my way to the back door when Michael's voice stopped me. Paul? What's up, mate? Do you always mow the garden so late? I smiled. No, I usually try to get it done when the sun's still out, only my wife's back home tomorrow and I wanted to get the place looking nice for her. I guess it must have looked pretty odd to be out here mowing at night, huh? No, I don't think so. I think everything's more fun at night. Oh, yeah? Yeah, I go on adventures all the time. I could hear the excitement in Michael's voice, even though I couldn't see his face properly. He was just a shadowy outline in the darkness of a garden. One time, we even went night fishing. Have you ever been? I shook my head. I've been fishing once or twice, but only during the day. I found myself grinning again, despite my urge to go back inside. The kid was sort of entertaining. Well, maybe you and your mom can show me and my wife sometime. Sounds like you guys are way more exciting than we are. I turned once more back to the door, and this time I was actually holding the handle when Michael's voice stopped me. Paul? Yeah, buddy. Paul, do you have anything to drink, like juice or anything? I hesitated. I'm not sure. I don't think... Do you mind if I have a glass real quick? My mom's still sleeping, and she's been super tired this week. I don't want to wake her. I paused with my hand on the door. If Beth had been in, I probably would have said yes straight away, likely without even thinking about it, but... Standing there in the dark garden, I was suddenly aware that it might look a bit odd if I invited a 10-year-old kid into my house. Even if he was my next-door neighbor, and I doubted his mom would like the idea all that much. Do you not have anything to drink at your place? My hand was still on the door, but I hadn't turned the handle yet. I stayed in the same position, my mind whirring with excuses, and when I heard a voice directly behind me, I almost jumped out of my skin. No, we don't have anything. I spun around and found Michael standing about a foot away from me, staring up at me with those large brown eyes of his. The kid must have clambered over the garden wall while my back was turned, must have done it without making a sound. Please, Paul, just a super quick drink and then I'll go back home. I won't even sit down, I promise. I made a quick mental calculation in my head. Our back door opened straight into the kitchen and I had orange juice in the fridge. Michael would probably be in and out in a couple of minutes, and his mom might find it a little odd that he'd been in the house if he told her, but wouldn't she find it odd if he saw her neighbor had refused her kid a drink when he asked? I hesitated for a couple more seconds, then sighed. Okay, go on then, but you have to make it quick, okay? I really do want to go to bed soon. Michael smiled up at me and nodded. I turned the handle and stepped inside. This is where I differentiate and I tell the kid to go fuck off and go get his own little drink somewhere.
Why wouldn't you just go inside and bring the drink to the kid?
That's also an option if you don't want to tell the kid to fuck off. But my number one is go get your own fucking drink.
Go get your own fucking
nerd. So you're a bit of a night owl, huh? What does that mean? I opened the fridge and grabbed the orange juice. It means someone who prefers the night, you know, because you said you go on adventures, you know, night fishing and stuff. I moved to the drying rack by the sink and grabbed a glass. Oh yeah, I'm definitely a night owl. I started pouring juice into the glass. Man, not me, or at least I wasn't when I was your age. I used to be scared of the dark. You'll get used to it. Huh? I said you get used to it, you know, once you spend enough time in it. Right. I turned and handed the glass of orange juice to Michael, and he took it from me and smiled. He moved the glass towards his mouth, then paused, watching me over the rim. You know, my mom doesn't like me doing this anymore. Doing what? Going into houses with strangers, not after last time. I stared down at the kid, and he looked back at me, the smile no longer on his face, and somewhere down in my stomach I felt something uncomfortable squirm. What do you mean, what happened last time? Michael glanced over his shoulder at the closed back door as if he was checking to make sure his mom wasn't there, and he moved the glass of orange juice away from his mouth and placed it on the kitchen counter and then shrugged. Nothing really. It's just that in the place we used to live, I made friends with this old man who lived a couple of roads over from us, and he invited me in for a drink too. Only then he got weird. Oh, Jesus. I tried to keep my expression the same, but it was suddenly wishing I'd had said no to the kid's drink request after all, and this didn't sound good. Some old pervert in his last town had invited him in for a drink, and then he'd got weird. How was his mom going to feel about him being on his own in my house now, given that something bad had clearly happened in the last place they lived? He got weird? The words were out of my mouth before I could stop them. I should have just sent the kid packing right then and there, but I guess my curiosity got the better of me, and Michael shuffled on the spot, staring back at me. Yeah, he wanted me to come down to the basement with him, and he told me he had this really cool Lego collection, and he asked if I wanted to see it, and he insisted that I see it, even when I said I had to go. Hey, Scutch, you want to look at my cool Legos? My mouth suddenly felt dry, so, did you go with him? Michael shook his head back and forth hard. No way. I ran back home. Mom told me I only go so far as the kitchen when I'm in a stranger's house. I felt mild relief wash over me, and then I replayed what Michael had said and felt the relief being replaced with confusion. Wait, what do you mean? Are you in strangers' houses a lot? Like, friends of your mom's and stuff? And Michael opened his mouth, then closed it again. He turned and moved his hand back to the glass of orange juice on the kitchen side, but instead of picking it up, he only prodded it with his finger, sliding it over the surface. And when he looked back at me, he carried on, as if speaking if he hasn't heard my question. Mom was really angry when she found out about the man. She made me promise I'd never ever go back there. Did she tell anyone about the man? What he said to you, I mean? No way. Michael looked away from me again. There was a slight smile on his face, like he was in on some joke I didn't understand. She did something better than that. Oh yeah? What did she do? She made him disappear. I had my mouth open to ask another question when I realized what Michael had just said. The next thought I had was that I must have misheard him. What did you say? I said she made him disappear. I told you night's the best time to hunt. Michael fixed me with those brown eyes of his, only right then they looked darker than brown, almost black. I tried to find words, but I was at a loss. Michael smiled up at me. It's funny, he said after a moment. People think Mom won't come in unless she's invited, but they've got rules all wrong. As long as one of us was already invited, then it's fine. She could come back with me at any time she wants. The kid smiled at me once more. Don't worry, Paul. I'll tell her you were nice to me. Make sure she goes easy on you when you meet her. Thanks for the juice. He turned away and pulled the back door open. I found my eyes wandering over to the glass of juice, my mind vaguely aware that he hadn't touched a drop of it. When Michael spoke one more time, I turned back to him, and he was framed in the open doorway, half lost in the night. It'll take some getting used to, he said, but you won't be scared of the dark much longer. Before I had a chance to reply, he'd melted into the shadows. We got fucking vampire kids.
Yeah.
Vampire family.
I feel like you could feel that one coming. I thought that one was...
I mean, that one was interesting,
Yeah.
but it's just because we had the polar opposite of the story you read beforehand.
Yeah.
We had the very real world fear of what it means to be scared for a kid.
Yeah.
And then we quite literally had supernatural
Kid.
fear of
The kid.
of kid.
Yeah.
Which is fun.
Yeah.
How things work like that. This is a two-parter. This is a two-parter.
Okay.
So you could take part 1 and I'll take part 2.
Okay.
But this is again that no sleep thing where they have a fucking sentence for the title. My son's camera monitor alerted in the middle of the night. I checked it and saw my wife and son sitting on the bed. They weren't my wife and son.
That's fun.
Alright.
Alright. Yeah.
Yeah, you take it.
Alright. I'm a nurse and I currently work nights. It's a total drag, but I'm hopeful I can go to days soon, since some of the coworkers are planning retirements. Anyway, I was working one night when just after 3 a.m. my son's monitor alerted me to sound and movement. No big deal at all. He probably coughed loudly or sneezed or something. He's 3 now, so he generally sleeps all night. Bring it up on my phone and I see him and my wife sitting on the bed. Again, no big deal. He must have cried out or gotten scared or something. I was about to close the app when I noticed they were acting strange. Almost creepy. And when I say almost creepy, I mean creepy as balls. They were sitting on the bed together, both of them just staring up at the camera with blank, emotionless stares.
That.
The night vision is black and white, so you had these white, eerie-looking eyes. They didn't move at all aside from their visible breathing. They just sat there staring at the camera. I close the app and I give my wife a call to make sure everything's okay. I never get a chance to call home on lunch, so in a way this is kind of nice to get to talk to my family while I'm at work. It rings a couple of times before she answers very groggily. Hello? It was like she was dead asleep when I called, and she looked wide awake when on the camera. Hey, you guys okay? Huh? Yeah? Buddy, my son's nickname, came in like 15 minutes ago. She seemed scared, so I said he could sleep with Mama. I'm confused here since I saw them in the room less than a minute ago. Literally 60 seconds had passed since I closed the app and made the call. Wait, so you guys are in bed? Yeah, I fell back asleep right away. Everything okay? Everybody keeps waking me up, she said, kind of annoyed. Hang on a sec. I put her on speaker and bring up the app, hoping I don't see it. When the app loads, I get that pang of intense nervousness in my stomach that I haven't had in a long time since I was a kid in school and realized I was eating breakfast of paper or something when I was due that day and I hadn't done it. My heart leaps into my throat. My wife and son are sitting on his bed looking up at the camera, same emotionless stares. Hello? You guys are in bed, right? Yeah, we're trying to sleep. Well, I'm looking at his camera, and I see you two sitting on his bed. No, we're in our bed. I know that's what you mean.
Why don't you come down here and check it out?
But I'm looking at his bed, and you two are in there. Hang on, she says. She's quiet for a sec, while she brings up the camera on her phone. I hear this guttural, terrified gasp, like she had sucked all the air in the room into her lungs, filling them to capacity. I don't hear this kind of gasp from my wife often. Usually when she's truly afraid, like during a jump scare in a movie, or one time when we turned her back on our son for literally a second, and he was down by the mailbox inches from the road. I hear a rustling of sheets, and the line goes dead. Of course, now I'm absolutely terrified.
Yeah, fuck that.
So I immediately call back. It goes to voicemail, so I call again. I call again.
Call the cops.
I call again and again with no answer. Finally, after about 4 minutes, she calls me. I tell you that for 4 minutes felt like 40 years. Hey, what's happening? I ask. She's absolutely hysterical and crying, and I can't understand a word she says. Stop! Slow down for a second, I say. She slows down enough to explain that they are in the car and driving to her parents. She looked at the camera, and when she saw what she saw on the... And when she saw what was on it, she got up and grabbed her son and rushed downstairs and out the door. Didn't even close the garage. Don't worry about it, I said. I'll drive by when I get off and close it. We live in a generally safe neighborhood, so I'm not too concerned that the door is up.
Wait, you're gonna go there?
Yeah, apparently
you're gonna go there.
He's just gonna casually close the door.
After she bails and you have no reason to go there, you're gonna go there.
Just to close the garage.
Fuck off.
Yeah. You will not go in there, she says.
Thank you. Someone has some fucking reason.
Hell no, I return. Why are we on the camera, she's asking. Is it recording? I don't know, I return. I'm gonna keep watching it and see if there's anything I can tell. Do our code words with Buddy. We have code words because we're nerds. We've seen too many pod people in imposter movies, so we decided a long time ago to make a code words with each other to be able to tell if one of us was an imposter. We have a couple code words, but we also have a 3-sentence story we recite together, each saying a different part alternately of each other.
That's actually pretty cool.
I hear her on the phone saying the things we taught her.
You usually don't have like narrators
like
this smart.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That are like horror junkies and
Yeah.
know all the rules and stuff.
It's like, hey, that's a fucking changeling. Fuck
Yeah.
you. You don't know the poem. say the poem.
He giggles as he says them. He does every time we practice, since he thinks they're a joke and doesn't have any idea of the real meaning. We're both convinced he's our son. My wife then says our part, and I'm convinced she's her. We've made up these words as a complete joke to ourselves. I've never once in my life ever imagined we'd actually meet them. Unreal.
That's crazy.
She got to her parents safely, and it was hard to hang up. I told her we'll figure it out in the morning, hopefully just a glitch. She said she didn't think it was a glitch. When she was running out, she thought she had to run by her son's room and the door was open. There's a little flashing light on the back of the camera that indicates it's connected to the internet. It gives off just enough light that when she ran by, she thought she saw out of the corner of her eye a shadowy outline of what could only have been an adult sitting on her son's bed. It sends chills down my spine to think about. Knowing they were safe and out of the house is the only thing that kept me at work at night. It was a long 4 hours, but I kept checking the camera every chance I got. And sure enough, they were still sitting on the bed, staring up at the camera with emotionless gazes. I studied them to see if I could see any pattern, from their breathing to their blinking. The breathing was steady and looked normal. It was their blinking that would tell me if it was some kind of bizarre time loop free accident video or
it's
not.
like some body snatcher shit.
I intently stare at my phone and count the seconds between each blink, telling myself that if this is a loop, then her blinks would be even and occur at the exact same time each time.
No.
There was no pattern to their blinking. It was erratic and random, just as the person blinking should be. The passing hours were what finally sealed the deal that this was not a weird loop video of some kind. My son's window is visible on camera, and I can see on camera that it's getting lighter outside his room. His curtains keep out just enough light to prevent the camera from exiting night vision, but lets in just enough to be able to tell the sun is rising. I try to figure out what the hell is going on I'm going to do before I leave work. Calling the police comes to mind, but I talk myself out of it. First of all, what am I supposed to say? Someone is in my house that looks like my wife but isn't?
No, just keep it at home invaders.
Worse yet, what if they are entities of some kind and police go do over and it kills them or something?
Okay.
I decided to tell a coworker about it.
Cross that bridge when you get there.
I'm not going to tell the police. I'm just going to tell some random coworker with me that's just going to think I'm an idiot.
Yeah.
He's a firm believer in the paranormal and might have a suggestion.
That doesn't make him the expert.
No. I show him the video and tell him the story. His initial response was, "That's creepy as fuck." Didn't have as much.
The expert is me. He's telling me the story and I'm saying that's creepy as fuck.
He says he wants to go over and check it out.
No, fuck you.
He says we both should.
Okay, it's not me. Never mind. There's no fucking way.
He says we both should. See if not my wife will try and act like my wife. I tell him absolutely not, and he says we should go at least the house, even if we don't go in.
Do you mind if I go in? See if she'll,
I agree on that since I wanted to close the garage. So I'm closing the garage. We got to my house and walked around the perimeter first. Not sure what we wanted to accomplish by that, but it felt like something we should do. The curtains were all drawn since nobody was there to open them in the morning, so we couldn't see anything. I went close to the garage, and suddenly I had this overwhelming urge to go inside and investigate. It was like I just had to know what was going on.
No, you don't.
So, in we went.
Fuck off.
We walked through the kitchen towards the foyer where the stairs are. It's so quiet in our house right now I could hear a feather drop. Forget the pin. We stop at the bottom of the stairs and wait a few seconds. Look at the camera again, and they are still sitting there. I've never been so scared in my life. My coworker puts his foot on the first step, and I suddenly say, "Stop," loudly. "Forget this. We were out of here," I tell him. "Come on." I start making my way back to the kitchen. We heard a loud creak in the floor from upstairs. It's in my son's room. He has a very loud...
Don't you have the camera video in front of you to know that they're not walking
that they're
around
walking
the house
around?
while you're in there?
He has a very loud creaky board right in the middle of his floor that almost impossible not to step on. My wife and I are still deciding if we ever want to fix it because it will alert us if he's ever up to no good when he gets older, trying to sneak out or something. "Come on, come on, come on," I yell as I motion him to move his ass. We're out of the house in about 2 seconds. Out on the street, I check my phone. Now only not my son was sitting on the bed, same blank stare. Not my wife was gone. "Holy shit," my coworker says. "That was stupid as fuck of us. Do not tell my wife we just went inside. She would be so ungodly mad if she found out what we just did." I use my garage door opener in my car to close the door. Before we leave, I look at the camera again. Not my wife is back on the bed, but not my son, both staring blankly up at the camera, blinking every few seconds. This was all about 4 days ago. Not my wife and not my son are still sitting on the bed staring up at the camera. They haven't moved a millimeter. We obviously haven't gone back to our house. What do we do?
That's where it ends.
That's our part 2.
I think this will be the last thing we read, and I'll finish it off.
All right.
So this is a...
I like this. Honestly, I like how realistic some of the stuff is. It's
the
super
frame,
unrealistic.
The slice of life frame of reference makes it fun to read.
I think I like the dialogue of it.
The realism, that it sounds like
holy
real
shit. Was there something you would say that? Most people.
Yeah, what did you say?
People
holy shit, that was stupid as fuck. Do not tell my wife we went inside.
Like that, I feel like that's more of a natural response than.
That's fair.
That's fair. Like that.
No, it's fair. It's fine. I think you can't. Here's my only gripe. Mm-hmm. You can't pretense a story by saying we watch horror movies, we're nerds, we have rules, and then say,
And
let's
then
go
break
in
them
the
all.
house.
Yeah, and then break every single one.
Because it's almost like, let's go in the basement, let's split up.
See, the dumbest thing about all that is that he literally went to the house just to close the garage door.
Don't you have a clicker?
He had it in his car the entire time. That's
What
the last thing he did. That's literally the last thing he did. Was like, oh, I just closed it with my car. Yeah, that's stupid. Why would you do anything
Why
in the
would
house?
you do that? Anyway.
Yeah. All right.
Let's see what this guy has to say. Apparently he wants to write a second part follow-up. I'm sorry it's taken so long. It's been an emotional month. I felt like I'm losing my mind or I've already lost it. I've been in the hospital for 3 weeks. You remember I left off at my wife's parents' house, not sure what the hell to do. My wife and I argued about it. My in-laws said, call a priest. I told my wife we're calling the cops, and that's it. The day we finally called the cops would be day 6. Not my family was still on the goddamn bed staring at the camera. I told the dispatcher there were intruders in my house, which is what I suggested, leaving out the part that they all looked exactly like my family. And I told her we were out of the house, but I would meet the police there, and she dispatched 2 units. My wife begged me not to go. I told her I had to be there. I had a foolproof plan. I would take her mom's iPhone and FaceTime with my wife while showing the police the camera on my phone. They would see that this is a fucked up situation and hopefully proceed with caution. My coworker friend said he would come with me as well. Why? My friend and I beat the cops to my house like most of you mentioned in the comments previously. I was packing heat. I have a concealed carry, so I had my 1911-45 on me. I was not concerned that this would bother the cops, as I was going to inform them of my permit and that I was currently carrying. What I wasn't going to tell them is that I had my father-in-law's AR-15 in my trunk. It's almost funny how many of you mentioned that that was the way to go in my previous entry. I didn't plan on telling the cops about it because I was not planning on needing it. It's a Chekhov's gun. It's a Chekhov's AR-15. They would come armed and prepared. They showed up and I let them know and I was armed and then enacted my plan. I initially told them the story. They looked at each other like I was crazy and that they didn't believe me. And this is when I FaceTimed with my wife so they could see that she was in fact not in the house despite what our cameras were showing. They still didn't seem to believe me, but this did pique their interest, and I hung up with my wife and I told her to call back as soon as we knew something. So, now we're sure this isn't a recording, an officer stated, repeating what I said. It's not. The day-night cycle has changed every day. Their blinking is erratic and it's not cyclical like it was a repeat. I know it's a stupid question, but your wife doesn't have a twin, the other officer asked, and I told him no. My friend spoke up. I have an idea. Turn the volume up. I'll go throw a pebble at the window. He went around back while I turned up the volume to the max. Okay, I'm tossing. When we heard a light tick sound from the outside, but the 1 second delay on the camera came in loud and clear through the phone. Not my wife moved at the sound of the pebble hitting the window, the first time I'd actually seen her move aside from the time she wasn't on screen when I initially went into the house the first day. She turned her head towards the window just slightly before turning back to the camera. Okay, so this is live, an officer said. Okay, sir, I need you and your friend to stay outside here. We're going to go in and find out what's going on here. Should you ask for more units? I asked, hopefully. Not at this time. We're going to assess the situation first. They don't appear to be armed, but we're going to be cautious. I opened the garage for them, and they made their way in towards my kitchen door, and they radioed dispatch that they were headed in, and so to stand by, and they disappeared into the house. I just see caps down below. All right. A few seconds after they went in, the cameras went out. I wanted to vomit. And I felt like I put my fingers in my mouth. I'd be able to feel my heartbeat since it leapt up so far in my throat. Shit! I yelled to my friend. I immediately popped the trunk and got my rifle out and ran into the garage and my friend right up beside me. We got inside just in time to hear a low, guttural howl from upstairs, demonic sounding almost, along with raised voices from the police. There were several shots. Need backup! Shots fired! He was cut off. Oh my God, my friend howled. He was scared shitless, but so was I. God fucking damn it, I knew it, I said, running up the stairs. My son's room is the first one you come to after getting up the stairs, so his wall is also what you see as you walk up the stairs. As I reached the top, I laid into the wall with my rifle, and it has a 30-round magazine, but I felt like I fired 100 shots. I fired all over the place, knowing full well the ammo would go through the wall like it was paper, concentrating on where my son's bed would be, but also near the door and towards the floor as well, in case whatever these things were thought to duck. We heard shrieks of pain coming from the room, and then nothing. My friend and I paused for a moment before deciding to go in because the camera was still out. We heard a whimpering coming from the room. There was a dead cop in the hallway that we had to step over. It was awful, and I'll never be able to unsee it. His head was several feet away from his body, in the threshold to our guest room. We found the other cop in my son's room, right inside the doorway. He had several large holes in his torso, as if he'd been impaled. Exactly what I was afraid would happen had happened. I called the cops, and whatever these things were had killed them. When we entered the room, we found the source of the whimpering was not my wife. She was laying on her back of the floor, holding her torso that was bullet-ridden and breathing heavy. The scene was awful. I can hardly put into words how awful it was. I know now, just like I did then, that they weren't my family. It shouldn't have been hard. I should have been able to just go in and finish it. But instead I fell to my knees. Not my wife begged for her life. "I don't want to die, honey," she whimpered. "I wanted to have more kids. I can't die now." I looked over at not my son, who had been dead. He'd taken 2 shots to the head, or what was left of it. He had several more in the torso and 1 or 2 in his legs and arms. If you have kids, seeing their lifeless, bullet-ridden body is a special kind of hell. Again, I knew it wasn't my son, but it was. I was going to be sick. I'd killed my family. I turned back to my not-wife. She was acting just like my wife. It even mimicked her anxiety about death that she had had in the past year or so. "It's not her, man." I forgot my friend was even there. "It's not her. Shoot it." I know what you guys are thinking. How many times has this happened in movies and you scream at your TV for the main character to just shoot the imposter because it's not their loved one? I guess movies get it right somehow. I'll never roll my eyes at the character who can't kill an imposter again. "Please don't shoot me," it begged. My hands were shaking as I aimed at it. Why couldn't I do it? I know. It isn't my wife." "Listen, man," my friend began calmly. "Look at it. Its blood is yellow. It's not your family." Was it yellow? It was. Seeing my family slain was so traumatic I haven't even noticed that their blood wasn't red. I steadied my aim, and not my wife suddenly stopped begging. She began that guttural, terrifying shriek, and something black and gray started to protrude from her mouth like a tentacle or something. I fired. At that range, her head more or less exploded. Whatever these things were, they appeared to be mortal. I was still on my knees, and my friend was out in the hallway just outside the door when we heard the sounds of approaching police sirens. I'd forgotten one of the cops had gotten shots fired call over the radio before getting killed, and it seemed like it had been hours, but it had only been 5 minutes since the police had gone in. My friend went downstairs to let the police know what to expect, and I stood up slowly and made my way back to the hallway. I was lightheaded, felt like I was going to be sick. And my bedroom is adjacent to my son's, so the doorway is about a foot to the right, my son's doorway. My door was closed, but as I exited my son's room, my door opened, and not me walked out of the hallway wearing exactly the same thing I was at that time. I was shocked. In place, I couldn't move, but it did. It walked towards me, and its right arm turned black and morphed into what appeared to be a tentacle. It was wiggling around like a squid or an octopus appendage, and when he thrust his arm at me, it solidified and impaled me through the abdomen. It then stabbed me in the left leg just above the kneecap. I fell to the ground in pain. Its tentacle arm was wiggling again. "Why did you kill my family?" it asked. And when it spoke, its voice changed, pitched several times. It was my voice, and then it was deeper, and then it was normal again, as if it alternated several times, saying that one sentence. It moved in closer. The rifle was gone, but I still had my .45. I pulled it out and got a shot off in its right knee, and it howled. As Not Me fell to its knees, I fired a couple more shots, getting 2 in its abdomen and left side of its ribs. It breathed heavily for a few seconds before I used the last of my strength to aim proper and shot Not Me in the face. Its blood was also yellow, and I lay there bleeding out, thinking that this was it for sure. I still had some strength from adrenaline kicking in, so I took my belt off and tried to make a tourniquet for my leg. With my stomach wound, it was hard to give it a good yank to tighten it, but then I took my shirt off and balled it up and packed my stomach wound and applied as much pressure as I could. Being a nurse probably saved my life. I passed out, but the measures I took must have kept me alive long enough for the EMS to arrive. I heard raised voices and the sound of pounding coming upstairs before I went out. It was probably a cop, but I felt pressure from somebody trying to keep my wound packed before I went out. I was in and out of consciousness as the EMS arrived, along with probably every cop in the city, and I was wheeled downstairs and put in an ambulance, but while I was being loaded into a gurney, I heard cops freaking out, and rightfully so. They lost 2 brothers, and there were 3 other bodies. Did he kill his brother? Are they twins? Probably referring to the not-me's dead body. Or his whole family? Put him on armed guard while at the hospital. We'll probably be getting charged. As I was getting placed in the ambulance, I saw my friend talking to a group of about 10 cops, all listening very intently to what he was saying, and I went out again into the ambulance. I woke up in the ER. My wounds had been treated. The tentacle hadn't been more than a few inches wide, so it was slightly larger than a large knife. They'd sewn me up, and I found that I was currently receiving a blood transfusion due to blood loss at my home, and my wife had authorized them to do whatever they needed while I was unconscious, and she was also extremely, extremely pissed that I went back into the house. We're okay now, but that's a story for another day. I was in the hospital for 3 weeks since I ended up getting an infection and almost went septic. I needed quite a few antibiotics. For the entire 3 weeks, I had cops in my rooms with questions, and after about a week, they released me and no longer had me under armed guard. I told them absolutely everything, not caring if it made sense or not. And, thank God, my friend had come with me since he was able to corroborate a weird story. Midway through the hospital stay, men with suits came to pay me a visit. They were government. I knew it right away. They said they were FBI, but I don't know if I believe that. They wanted to talk about my Knott family. The police chief and the coroner were involved, and it was very hush-hush. They made it clear that this was not to get out into the public, and this is where I have to apologize, probably for an anticlimactic ending of this ordeal. I don't know what the Knott family and me were, neither do they, and the only thing we know is that they were sentient creatures that looked like us and had yellow blood. I begged the coroner to tell me about their autopsies, but he said he wasn't allowed to say, and he must have felt bad for me since I received a bouquet of flowers a couple days later, and the card inside the envelope read, "We don't know what they are. They have the same organs we do, but in different parts of their bodies, aside from their brain, but what's red and pink inside us is green and yellow inside them. They're humanoid creatures, but whatever they aren't human. The government thinks they may be extraterrestrial. Destroy this letter ASAP." We had our house professionally cleaned. It was almost surely a government team since they contacted us on behalf of the police. We could not find any Google reviews or a website for the company online, and my wife and I are not going back to our house. We would love to burn it down, but there's no way to do that and avoid suspicion of arson at this point. We'll end up taking a huge loss on the property since everyone in our neighborhood knows that there was an incident involving multiple deaths in the house, but we don't know what actually happened. It'll be hard to sell, but eventually it will. We're going to move out from here. I told everyone at work it was a home invasion and they bought it. I'll go back to work in a couple of weeks and we'll start looking for a new house, and again, I'm sorry. I know everyone wanted a concrete ending and to know exactly what the fuck those things were, but we just don't know. Aliens sounds good to me. I've been thinking if they were supernatural or demons, gunfire wouldn't have worked and been able to kill them. It's just hard to say. If they were aliens, why did they just sit there and creep in our house for a week? They didn't even try to take over our lives. It's hard to wrap my head around it. If it is aliens, keep your eyes peeled out there. There could be more of them.
There could be more stories.
There could be more tentacles in my butthole.
That was about 4 or 5 different genres all mixed up into that.
I feel like that guy kind of lost it a little bit there. But part 1 is fun.
Part 1 is fun.
The rising action is always more entertaining than the conclusion in my head. I would much rather hear and see something I don't understand and just leave it at that. Like, I love it when things don't get explained. I've ridden this horse into battle multiple times, but I actually feel like the worst thing Ridley Scott could have done was Prometheus.
Yeah.
And Alien Covenant. Like,
Yeah.
don't
explain it. Yeah.
Don't explain it.
Yeah.
I don't want to know.
Yeah.
But yeah. I don't know. I really like the first one.
Yeah.
And I like the second one. But we kind of just got more the different sides of that coin of like being scared of kids, for kids, other
somehow
shit.
we ended up reading an alien story still.
And somehow we ended up reading more aliens, which is what we just did fucking last time.
Yeah.
So maybe I do need to vet this shit, but maybe not. I don't know.
No, it was fun.
Which one do you think you liked the most?
Oh, the first one by far. I do like the creepy kid one.
Something about creepy old man Jenkins.
Creepy old man, zombie.
Creepy old man. Well, yeah, she didn't
no
have
idea
a
what the
frame
kid
of
is.
reference for a kid who's been bloodied and battered and screaming for his
like
life.
a wild coincidence. That was something we kind of talked about earlier.
Yeah.
We talked about all that stuff earlier before we even started.
We did.
So that was kind of odd that we jumped right into a story that was like that.
It's almost like I planned this.
Something like that. Yeah, right.
I didn't. I don't plan any of this. It's not. I don't plan any of this. I'm not. People can think I'm smart. I'm not. I don't want. I'm gonna pop that balloon for you right away. I don't plan any of this. This is all just happenstance.
That was fun. Yeah, it was fun.
I want to get back to reading like stupid fucking stories about kids though.
Yeah.
I want to read a story about, and maybe you can write this one. I want to read a story about a dumb kid who gets himself killed. That's what I want to read.
A dumb kid who gets himself killed?
A dumb kid who gets himself killed. Put it all in the frame of reference of being a scared, dumb kid who gets himself killed in some awful way.
See that?
No, you don't have to, you don't have to write that. That's fucked up.
Just messing with you. It's fine.
No, I was gonna break in at some point, but we got into a rhythm of just reading stuff real quick. I do want to say, you are not the only father on our podcast anymore. Not only do we have Royale with Cheese, which is his name. He has several kids, and he's older than you, so you're also not the old man of this show anymore. But at the very same time, I do want to put it out there, and I'm sure he's not listening or not going to mind me mentioning it, but Sofa King actually just had a baby. So we have someone on the show who just had one of my friends just had their first kid. And so Mazel Tov, congratulations. It's a beautiful baby girl. It's one of those things that makes you kind of take a step back and say, like, I don't know if that's going to happen for me or anyone else around me.
Yeah.
I keep telling myself that, like, if it happens, it happens. I'm certainly not, like,
trying to make it happen.
Working on that plan, Yeah. And then at the very same time, I keep telling myself, like, I know my sister's going to have kids. And that might, like, be enough for me. That might scratch that itch. Because I see my sister every day. I'm right there with her. If she has to deal with kids, I know I'm going to get roped into dealing with them. They're going to become surrogate kids to me. So, you know, that might be enough for me.
And for me, I think a lot of it was, like, I was an only child growing up. So I had no siblings.
Oh,
my whole understanding of how to be a parent is based off of my interaction with my parents. So it's different though. There's nothing to compare to. You know, I can't compare to.
No reference point.
Yeah, no reference point. So I'm just kind of, and we all do. We all just kind of wing it at some point. And then if you end up having more, then you kind of have an idea, well, I fucked that up this time, so I'll fix it this time. So, like, every version of your kids are essentially, like, a better version of
It definitely explains
parenting.
why my parents like my youngest sister the most out of the three of us. Because my brother's a fuck-up, I'm kind of middled, and then my sister kind of got everything right. So third time's a charm with them. You know.
It makes sense, though. It's probably when your parents got it right.
also fair. I know they get defensive because it was a time and place. But they say my brother was planned. I don't think my brother was planned. Were either of your kids planned?
I'll say my kids are named after two distinct varieties of alcohol.
I've alluded to as much on earlier episodes.
And that alcohol is also the cause of
the
cause of them being conceived in the
I
first
love the
place.
joke
So, like,
from
yeah.
I love the joke from Four Christmases that the brothers are all named off of the cities that they were conceived in.
Yeah.
Because there's Orlando, Dallas, and Tallahassee.
It is so strange like that, how that it was, it's just one of those things where it literally happened on, like, both my kids conceived on the same day, they were born on the same day, 4 years apart, and it's such a wild thing. And then we were just like, well, one of them was already named after stuff. Second one happened the exact same way, so we're just gonna name it.
We're just gonna
fire right off the other
No,
side
I
of the
like
jig,
that.
so
I think
it
that's
was
funny.
Fun. So it was fun, but
I think that's funny.
yeah,
But you can't necessarily say that you planned
absolutely
for it.
never planned
Okay.
whatsoever.
Okay.
Oh, no, definitely not.
Okay.
And I figure, like, honestly,
I mean, that's fine. I'm not judging in
Mhm.
any way, shape, or form. I learn from
Yeah.
asking these questions because I think it says something about the type of person you are, and I don't mean that in a derogatory way at all. I mean that you are a confident enough individual that when you found out you were having a kid, you pretty much just said, swing for the fences, handle it when it comes, we'll take it as the way we take it.
Yeah.
The way I live my life
Mhm.
is anxiety ridden,
I got you.
and if I'm looking down at my dick, I'm going, what did you do?
What did you do? Yeah.
So at that point, I would have been like, what?
The reality is, is that the first years are hard. I mean, the first 2-3 years.
I'm hearing about it from my buddy.
Yeah, I mean, they're basically just meat blobs. I mean, that's really what they are. They're just meat blobs that you just try to keep alive.
Yeah.
And then they start to develop personalities and stuff like that. And then honestly, they get more enjoyable as they get older. You miss the time.
Little meat
you
blob
miss the
stuff.
little meat blobs. But then you enjoy the time with them more as they get older, because then they start to develop more of their personality.
Their personality,
you can share
their
interests that you
intelligence.
have.
Yeah.
Like my daughter getting into horror stuff now. My son has his own interest that we get along with. He's big into retro stuff, and he likes his big vinyl collection and things like that. So we have things that we are interested. He loves classic Godzilla movies. He loves the classics. So we get into some of those. We get into a lot of the fun stuff. And my daughter, she likes the horror thing. So like they are developing their own personalities, and there's pieces of you in them. Like they have to learn about that stuff.
Yeah,
from something.
you are giving them things.
So you see that
throughout your life.
You know what I mean? Like you're not shaping their entire personality, but you're giving them the pieces of yourself.
It's informed.
Yeah, and you appreciate that. And if they like it, they like it. If they don't, they don't. And you don't get mad about it, but you.
Maybe you don't, but my dad does. He calls me all sorts of names. When he and I disagree on things, he just shuts down and starts calling me bad words.
Yeah.
Yeah, my dad's kind of a troll. He really is. I think there was this point where it's like, I don't know. From like, I don't know. I want to say from like 5 to 15, we had a real good decade in there where he would show me things and I would just consume it.
Yeah.
And then I became a person with my own thoughts and my own interests, and I started going off in a different way, and he started calling me a fag. And it's just like, and it's just funny. It's funny in hindsight because it's just like, he'll think I'm too pompous about stuff now. He'll be like, you think about that too much. And I'm like, no, this is just how I think about things. Yeah, it's just how. And second off, you're the one who did this to me, so fuck off. Like, he takes none of the responsibility for it. He takes none of the responsibility for being like, oh, when you were 10, I made you watch Alien and Aliens and The Thing. Yeah. And like Hellraiser and like all of this bullshit that crafted you into the. I'm literally wearing a Nightmare on Elm Street shirt. Like. You did this to me.
And now you're too far into it now.
And now it's all you are. Yeah. And I'm kind of upset about it. And I'm just like, fuck off, I like this.
Yeah. I would say that is not the relationship I have with my kids. And like we were talking about, like I feel like I am the kind of father that would like hold like a fart in for 8 hours just to wait for my daughter to be next to me so I could do it. So I could just be miserable like the entire day. Yeah. And just like my stomach hurting just for like the 3 seconds where she sits next to me.
To make her
just gross her out.
Deal with it.
Yeah.
I mean, my dad's the
So
type
that's
to
more
just
my
let
personality,
it
so,
rip no matter
yeah.
where he is, no matter who he's around.
Yeah.
So I think that's fair. There's a reckless abandon there.
Yeah.
No, but that's funny. That's calculated.
It's calculated.
That's
It's fun.
calculated.
It's just that kind of fun. I mean, kids are fun. Like, I would tell everybody, like, you can never really, like, be afraid of it. It's a lot of, like, just kind of, it's just something that happens.
Oh, no, I'm very much afraid
Yeah.
of it. And I think that's going to be, that's a hurdle.
Yeah.
That's a hurdle. That's a bridge. I don't know if I'm ever going to jump
I mean, I'm
across,
scared of them murdering me.
That's a constant.
Yeah,
That's a
like,
constant.
thing.
I was telling you earlier,
Yeah.
you've been on this show for 6 years.
Yeah.
You know, that this is your 9th episode. This is your 6th year on the show. This has been your message this entire time. And like we've dabbled in so much other things, but it's funny that one of the things we come back to is still, it's going to be relevant for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
I think even when your kid is like, your oldest is like an adult, you're still gonna be like, don't show up at my house in the middle of the night and kill me.
Yeah, I think he's definitely like he's the one that would just kind of like stand outside the door and just kind of like stare at it and just like wait for you to open the door. Like, he's the one that would show up to your house at like, 10 o'clock at night and realize that he didn't want to like wake up everybody sleeping and would just stand in front of your like Ring camera for like 9 hours until you opened up the door and be like, what are you doing here?
You'd have to like call to, are you the other son?
Yeah, like he's really just like sitting there, right?
Sitting there staring at
he is that kind of person.
I will say that story tapped into some type of fear that I've only realized now living here, because she has cameras all over the property, all
so
over
what
the
if you
house.
actually saw something like that?
And I luckily I tune it out. I don't have the app on my phone. I don't even want to go there.
Yeah.
And every once in a while she'll show me like, oh, there's a fox running around. I was like, I don't want to fucking know.
Yeah.
You're gonna tell me one day that there's someone outside like fucking staring at us, and I'm gonna be like, no, fuck you.
Yeah.
So like,
you're crazy.
I'm
Someone
just
standing in the wood
She
line
also
or
did
some
this
shit
thing,
like that.
and she doesn't do it anymore. But she did this thing when like I was over here watching the cats one weekend where she was gone, and she started like talking to me through the camera, and I literally looked up at it and said like, fuck you, stop doing that, talk to me like a real person. I hate knowing that you're watching me when you're not fucking here. You're in a different fucking country. I don't like this.
I've had
the
wild stuff like
surveillance
that.
aspect of it.
Yeah, I've had wild stuff happen like there's a lot too unknowing when people are around you. That's kind of unnerving. I've had times where I've gone out into the woods and I've been, just 100 acres out into the woods in the middle of nowhere, and then I've randomly found on like not even on a path, but I've randomly found like a cigarette butt still smoking and shit like that, and you're like,
but I haven't seen a person.
I haven't seen a person,
Yeah.
and you're like, what the fuck? Like, those are like little things that like happen, and you're like, you look around, you like panic for a second, you're like, your heart goes into your throat, and you're like,
yeah. That's some visceral terror. That's some actual horror. That's what we're here for, folks. We're all about tapping into that shit that gives you the heebie-jeebies in the middle of the night, that make your balls rise up to your throat and you cough one of them out. Yeah. Anyway, any last messages for these beautiful people?
Nah, I appreciate all the time I get to appreciate the time I get to do this, to get to talk about the things
I think it's fun that the prospect of the next episode where you're coming back for might be you sharing a story with us that you've actually written.
Yeah, I think it's gonna be fun.
That might be.
I already have some.
Your 10th.
I already have some wheels turning in my head, and I think it's gonna be a good time.
Yeah,
we're gonna make something.
Writing special is going to happen.
Yeah.
So I want people to get ready for it because it's coming, and it's coming sooner than you think.
Yeah.
So anyway, Scutch.
It was a pleasure, buddy.
Scutch
Oh my gosh.
MacGee.
Absolutely wild.
Creepy dad of the frontier.